Whoa. What's up, guys? Dave Mattei back for another Mattei review. It's been a while since I had a Mattei review, but I have been reviewing Matteis. You'll see in a moment. I'm going to bring you guys on over to yerbamatteland.com. And on that page, you can see all the reviews I've been doing for the past several months, for the past couple of years, actually. But these reviews keep on going. Once in a while, I come across an exceptional Mattei, and I want to actually make a video about it because I really like it. This is a Mattei I briefly discussed last week. That was during a time when I was still exploring it, but over the weekend, I reached an inflection point, a moment of clarity that always comes when I'm reviewing a Mattei. I have no real science to reviewing a Mattei, which I'll explain in a second. It's not a real science. It's more of an intuition, but it takes some time for me to begin to understand a Mattei, to begin to build a relationship with a Mattei, with a particular brand of a Mattei. I never rush it. Sometimes a Mattei takes me one day to begin to understand, or sometimes it takes me months to fully understand. But on average, after about 7 years of drinking yerba mate, I could pretty much size up a Mattei within a week to a week and a half or so, until I reach that moment of clarity where I say, okay, now I understand what this Mattei is trying to say to me. Now I understand what's going on with the body, the flavor, the profiles, and the way that the Mattei was harvested, what have you. So last week in my online Mattei circle, you saw me briefly discuss this Mattei, Nobleza Gaucha. So this is a Mattei I got when I was recently in Argentina a couple months ago. The good thing about Argentina, if you guys ever go there, there is literally shelves of yerba mate in every supermarket. Wherever you go, any supermarket, any store, you could go anywhere to buy food and you're going to find yerba mate shelves. The ratio to coffee and yerba mate is about 80% yerba mate, 20% coffee in Argentina. It's a misconception to think that the Argentinians do not drink coffee. They love coffee. They drink coffee all the time, actually. Coffee in Argentina, and this is a little tangent, bear with me, is not something that is shunned upon. It's not something that people say, oh, well, since yerba mate is our national drink, we're not going to drink coffee. Quite the opposite, really. From my experience over 7 years of going back and forth to Argentina, the Argentinians love coffee. They drink it all the time still. But I would say those people that drink coffee all the time, they still appreciate their Mattei. They really do. So it's more of a balance. I know a lot of what I've been talking about over the past several years has been positioning Mattei as a coffee replacement, which I still am, and I still believe that yerba mate will naturally begin to, let's say, displace the coffee market naturally. But don't get me wrong here. I still believe that coffee does have some health benefits to it, believe it or not. It really does. If you look into the chemistry of coffee, it has different compounds, different materials, rutin, quercetin, different acids that truly do help the body. The problem is when we get into, creating a high acidic situation with coffee where we're brewing it very strong and we're roasting the beans very aggressively. That kind of alters things in the coffee bean. But the purpose of what I'm doing is not to demonize coffee. Yes, drink your yerba mate and, get rid of coffee if you want to. That will probably help you overall in terms of health benefits. That's kind of a no-brainer if you compare the two side by side. But drinking some coffee here and there, fine. Everything in moderation. Salud. So for those of you guys who don't know who I am, real quickly, my name is Dave Mattei, founder of Circle of Drink, a yerba mate company and global organization. I love yerba mate, drink it every single day. I drink about 2 liters of it a day. This is 1.9 liters. So I drink that whole thing at least every single day. That's the hot water. This is the yerba mate gourd, the most traditional way of drinking yerba mate. You put the herb inside here. Then you add this thing called a bombilla, which is a metal straw with a filter at the end of it. And then what you do is you grab yourself a hot water thermos, anything you have that has hot water in it. It could be a kettle, it could be a pot, it could be a cup, anything. The purpose of the thermos, obviously, is to preserve the heat. And boom, you pour that in, you drink it just like this. Now, anybody that actually joins this discussion, uh, don't be offended if I ignore you. I set up this situation, the control room, so if you do pop in, your audio is going to be muted and your video is going to be muted until I finish my little presentation. Then I'll open it up if anybody wants to join, ask questions. But if you're also watching this on YouTube, feel free to ask questions in the chat. After this little discussion, I'll go back over to the chat. If anyone had any questions, I'll try to answer them. And then that'll be it. You figure 20 minutes and this is over. Nice little quick Mattei circle. All right, guys. So this is not going to be just a review on Nobleza Gaucha. It's also going to be a discussion in general on some of my understanding on tasting yerba mates in general, all sorts of yerba mates. So some general profiles talking about flavors and things like this. But let me first just start by saying, okay, yes, Nobleza Gaucha, this is a brand that I would say is a very streamlined, consistent brand. I've never been a big fan. If you've read my reviews in the past of Nobleza Gaucha, they're kind of lackluster, in my opinion. These sort of mates are just very generic. I would call them almost the McDonald's of mate. Not in that they're bad. It's more so that they're just kind of boring in general. Some mates just have this kind of cardboard, flat line flavor profile. Many mates, really. There's a lot of them out there that kind of have this kind of boring situation. Now, when I say boring, that's just my opinion. There's a lot of people in the world, particularly Argentinians, who would say, Dave, you're out of your mind. I love the regular Nobleza Gaucha, or I love I'm on the traditional. For me, I don't know. I like things that kind of speak to me. I like things that have depth, flavor, nuances, subtleties, whispers, cascading effects. I don't know. I just love the whole gourmet aspect of yerba mate. I love the mates that have this gourmet aspect. Now, when I say this word gourmet, all I'm really talking about are mates that have some level of complexity to them, mates that have some level of depth to them. I'm not using gourmet in the context as, you know, elitist or something outside of the grasp of somebody's grasp. No, I'm not trying to position mate as that per se. I'm just saying I respect the gourmet aspect of yerba mate in that wine has it, you know, different spirits have it. For instance, you know, simple example, there's so many different grape varieties in wine that are grown in different regions that produce different results. So, for instance, we have the Syrah grape. You know, the Syrah grape, the Australians call the Shiraz, or Shiraz, rather. And then that grape has a different manifestation in Australia. Very bright, bold, spicy, fruity body. And then if it's grown in France, it has more of a tame, more perhaps elegant body to it. So the same thing we see with yerba mate. Yerba mate has this same sort of relationship that grapes have to wine. Same thing. So mate, depending on where it's grown, the soil, the terroir, which is essentially the elements of the character of the mate, depending upon the geography or the soil it's grown in, mate shares the same thing, if not deeper than wine, in my opinion. So the thing is that prior to Dave Mattei coming around, and I don't like to talk about myself in the third person, so pardon me, but prior to me making these videos several years ago, as far as I know, there's never been anybody in the world that was ever publishing information about mate as being a gourmet tea. Why? Because I was looking for it. I was looking for myself 7 years ago. I just couldn't find another Dave Mattei out there talking about mate. So I took it upon myself to be that person to say, okay, well, mate is just like green tea. Mate is just like wine. Mate is just like whiskey and cheese and olives, all these gourmet foods, but nobody was talking about it like that. So I took it upon myself and I just started to analyze mate in that respect. About 10 years prior to finding mate, I was already studying green tea and coffee and wine and cigars and whiskey and these sort of things. So when I found out about mate, I was like, oh my gosh, this is gourmet. This particular tea has so much depth of flavor, so many nuances, so much texture, so many little things going on here that why isn't anybody talking about these things? I just couldn't find any material online. I couldn't find any sources. I couldn't find any books. And, you know, the reason why that is because, and no offense to the South Americans, it's just that the Argentinians and the Uruguayans and the Brazilians, just allowing me to generalize here, they didn't really care about mate in that respect because they grew up with mate. For them, mate was just their plant, and they consumed it, they loved it, and it was great. They never thought about these things like gourmet and the different flavors and taste profiles. Now, don't get me wrong. Many of the large yerba mate companies in South America, they do have their own in-house laboratories where people taste the mate, and there are experts out there that nobody's ever heard of course, because they work inside these companies. So I'm not trying to diminish that. I'm just saying, generally speaking, the Argentinians don't really talk about mate on this level, nor do they really care to. But just now, quite ironically, you know, we're starting to see people in Argentina and South America, in different parts of South America and Brazil, just starting to talk about it on that level now after, you know, the decades and generations of mate, which is great. I love that. That's amazing. Perhaps Circle of Drink inspired them. Who knows? So I just want to get that out of the way. Keep in mind, guys, yerba mate is gourmet. It's totally complex. You know, it has so many characters. So let's just jump into Nobleza Gaucha. All right, guys. So let me actually share my screen so you guys can see some close-ups of Nobleza Gaucha. All right, all right. I hope that you will be able to see this. I think you can. Okay, guys. So when I first had this mate, I started drinking this mate maybe, I don't know, a month ago, a couple weeks ago. And it was okay at first. It took time for me to begin to understand it. I thought in my mind, I was a little biased because I already knew what Nobleza Gaucha was about. I knew that it was a kind of a boring, kind of streamlined, consistent, overly consistent, I would say, mate, kind of doughy. But then I kept on drinking it, and then I began to understand this mate a little bit better. And now I've reached the conclusion that I really like this mate. I feel that they did a good job. I feel that it is gourmet. It has a lot of quirky things going on. I like mates that have all these quirky things going on, different flavor profiles. The thing about this mate, it's a dry mate, I would say. It has high levels of acidity, so it kind of dries your mouth out. It's not really kind of like a plush, kind of viscous sort of mate. It's more dry, I would say. But the interesting thing about this mate is that it has all these mineral flavors and you know, stones and dirt going on. But then you also have like this snappy green flavor going on, snappy green tea situation. And then that's all kind of mixed up together with a fruitiness, almost like a berry, mild kind of strawberry situation. Very mild, but it's there. So what I like about it is that it has something to say. If a mate has something to say and it has a personality, I like it. Sometimes it comes off, mates don't speak to you right away. You have to keep on drinking them. You have to give them time. You have to build a relationship. And then after, you know, some time, it'll start to reveal itself to you, almost as if the mate were saying, okay, now you're worthy to understand me. Now you're worthy. You put in the time. You kept on drinking me. Now I'm going to reveal the finer elements of my nature to you. So that's kind of what happened with me with this mate. So let me go over this kind of review system that I have with you guys. As you can see on the left, I like to always start with the origin. Where is the mate from? Why is that? Because I'm beginning through my own research to classify the mates based upon geographical regions. I believe that mate is influenced by the soil. How is the soil composition influencing the mate? A good example of this would be most Paraguayan mates share this similar kind of rich tobacco cherry situation. And yes, a lot of that comes from how the mate is processed after it's been selected. But I believe a lot of it comes from the soil. So this mate is from Misiones, the northern region of Argentina. It's produced by Molinas, which also produces Cruz de Malta. And from what I understand, this company, Molinas, they're basically a really big food company in Argentina. They don't actually grow their own mate. They rely on conglomerate of various growers, and they select, you know, some fine yerba mate in most cases from these growers, and then they create their own blends, so to speak. Yeah, they essentially are blending. Now, when I say this word blend, it doesn't necessarily mean that a mate has to have additional herbs in it. Sometimes, in many cases, blends could be just different mates put together. That is a blend as well. So, moving on here, the cut is a classical Argentine cut. Let me show you an example of this cut. So this cut is kind of rustic. When I say rustic, as you can see, there's not a lot of uniformity going on here. And I kind of like that about this mate, because that's pretty much how it tastes. You have splinter palos, and palo means twig in Spanish. Splinter palos is a term that I coined, where essentially there's a lot of fine palos, very thin, fine palos. And then you have regular sized palos, like you can see this guy over here to the right. And then you have monster palos, but there aren't really any monster palos in this. What I call a monster palo is just a huge stem inside the composition. Sometimes you see mates with large amounts of monster palos. This one doesn't really have any. As you can see, there's a good amount of medium to fine cut leaves. There aren't really any large, broad leaves in there. It's kind of I would say, smaller cut leaves. And then there's really not a lot of polvo. Polvo means powder. The more polvo that's included in the mate, the richer the body, the heavier the body, the deeper the body. This mate doesn't have a lot of polvo, which is okay. I think it works for it. Let me show you a little close-up. This mate actually comes with this dispenser inside, built into the box, which is pretty cool. I've never seen that before, built into the actual paper box. So as you can see, this is a kind of a nice cut, beautiful, rustic cut. Nothing too crazy about it. I like it. I like the fact that it's kind of rustic like that. We'll double back to the beginning in a second. Now, this is kind of a preview to another video I'm going to do in the future, deciphering the boxes of yerba mate. But as you can see, this says Cosecha Seleccionada. Cosecha Seleccionada. That basically means special selection. Special selection. So when a company says Cosecha Seleccionada, it means that they took additional time and care to select the leaves off of the yerba mate plant. They probably selected the most tender leaves, the cleanest leaves, the finest leaves. Some other companies state that they have different lots or different growing regions where they have mate that's, say, for instance, grown in the hills or grown in shaded areas or grown under a canopy. That may also be considered special selection. This particular company considers it leaves that they handpicked from specially selected leaves off of certain trees. And I think it kind of worked for this mate, because I do taste the refinement of this mate. I do taste that this mate has a lot of layering effects going. Let's go back to the top. Now, the body, I would say this is a nice medium bodied. It's probably a light to medium bodied. Then I put rustic, as you can see in the center right there. Now, rustic, how do I explain that? Essentially, a rustic, after you drink, let's say, 30 or 40 different brands of mate, you begin to understand which mates taste rustic. A rustic taste of mate is a mate that has like this dirt taste to it. It has this kind of attitude to it where it's just all over the place in some degree, but not all over the place in the respect that it's not working. It's just kind of quirky, where you have bright green, crispy flavors mixed with floral flavors, mixed with clay flavors, mixed with a little bit of briny, salty flavors. That's what I mean by rustic. I mean that it's kind of rough around the edges, but I like that about this mate because it's different. It's showing me something else. The other Nobleza Gauchos are a little bit boring, I would say. Now, as you can see to the right of rustic, I put this word campo or campo-esque. Whenever you see the word campo, or sometimes it's accompanied with the other word monte, campo y monte, that means that this mate essentially has been grown. It's essentially a category of mate in Argentina. Now, this brand did not state Campo. I'm just saying it's Campo-esque. It kind of tastes Campo. Campo, the taste of a Campo mate essentially means it's a rustic taste. It's the taste of mates of the northern part of Argentina where, you know, they intentionally didn't want to make the mate too polished. They intentionally, you know, grew the mate in certain regions that would produce a quirky taste. That's what I interpret, at least, this word Campo y Monte meaning when you see that on a box. Nobleza Gaucha definitely has this sort of quirky countryside, walk through the forest, barnyard situation. Other examples would be Ropa Pio, that mate I spoke about last time. Another example would be Andresito. Another example may be maybe Pipore to some degree. I would say Pipore sin palos without the stems to some degree is kind of rustic. Moving along, the type is the Cosecha Seleccionada, special selection. Now, the cycle essentially means how long is the mate going to stay strong? Now, in prior videos, you've seen me say the mate, the cycle is dependent upon how much water, exactly how much water, whether it's a third of a thermos or half of a thermos or a full thermos. Yes, that's true. But for me nowadays, I determine cycle totally intuitively, just by drinking the mate every day for several weeks and determining how strong the mate is, whether it lasts long with water, whether the flavors go away quickly or the flavors are sustainable. I would say with this mate, it's a short to medium cycle. But even today, after drinking it, I'm leaning more towards just a pure short cycle, which means that if I were to quantify it, I would say after about 20 to 25, or let's say 20 times you pour the water into the gourd, it just basically becomes flat. And at that time, when it becomes flat, you could do something called the hemisphere switch, which you've seen in other videos. I'll put a link below if you don't know what that is, where you switch the Monta to the other side, and then you could use the unspent, so to speak, mate, or you could just flood the entire mate by pouring water over all the dry areas on top of the gourd indiscriminately to use up all the mate. But overall, I would say this is a short, maybe entering medium cycle. Aged. Now, there's a huge situation going on when it comes to aging mate. This is another video I'll make in the future. And the reason I have to make all these videos is, number one, because I love doing it. I love sharing information on mate. I love speaking about it. But also because in Argentina and Brazil and Paraguay, and again, no offense, but they just never really cared to talk about the nuances and the details of how the mate is aged, how the different processes affect the mate. They just never really cared to do that. And by law, the government doesn't regulate them. It doesn't say that they have to share this information. This is also akin to how in the United States, we don't have to label GMO, genetically modified organisms. Not to say that these mates are GMO'd or anything. That's just an example. So when it comes to aging mate, there's essentially, let's say, of aging. Of course, there's many subtleties in between, but you have in Brazil, for instance, where the mate is purely green. There's no aging. After they pick the mate and they grind it up into powder, they vacuum seal it, and the mate is pure and green. There's zero aging. That's why the mate coming out of Brazil, the native Brazilian mate, is just purely green and raw, essentially. Not to say that mate is better. I wouldn't say that it's better than any other mate. Now, natural aging is essentially when they cut down the mate trees and they chop it up into fine, very rough, coarse cuts where there's still stems and big leaves and everything, and then they put them in a burlap sack and they let it age up on average to about 9 months. That's what natural aging means, where the mate is aging from anywhere from 6 to 12 months. In Paraguay, you see some companies that age up to 36 months, actually, or 24 months sometimes. So that's what natural aging means. There's a whole situation that goes on when a mate is aging. the sugar levels change and evolve. The acidity levels in the mate change and evolve. In my opinion, and in the opinion of trusted mate growers that have confided in me, I believe that a lot of the flavor of the mate is affected by the aging process. What occurs during the aging process? How is the mate aged? I believe that that is the predominant force behind the flavor of the mate. Of course, like I said earlier, a lot of it has to do with how the mate is grown, the soil, the conditions, the elevation, the regions. Is it grown as a monocrop in direct sun, or is it grown under the canopy? Is it grown in the forest? There's a lot of conditions, but I believe that a lot of the flavor of the mate has to do with the aging process, how it's aged and how long it's aged, and the temperature in which it's aged. That's for another video, but I just wanted to briefly touch upon that. And then the last one is grown. How is it grown? This mate is grown conventionally, which means that they did not state that they grew it organically. They did not state anything about if they used fertilizers or not. So by default, I put conventional. If a mate states that it's been grown organically, then I'll put organic. Or if a mate states that it's been grown without chemicals, which there are many mates that are grown without chemicals, but they are not organic, even though that they were grown organically. That's for another video. But this one's just grown conventionally. All right, so that's pretty much Nobleza Gaucha. This is some other pictures. So overall, I like this mate. It's a good mate. It really surprised me because this Nobleza Gaucha line of mates never really truly impressed me. But they did the right thing with this particular one, I would have to say. Congratulations to Molinas. This is a good mate. I would definitely recommend this mate. As I said in the beginning of this video, you guys could check out yerbamateland.com. Let me actually on yerbamateland.com, you could see all the reviews I did in the past. So let me actually go on and find that. 1 second, folks. This is a page where there's about, I don't know, coming on 40 yerba mate reviews I did over the past year and a half. A lot of these reviews are going to be in a book that I'm publishing in about a year or less than a year or so. So I took the liberty of actually posting them online as well. Let me share that with you. So whenever you guys have heard about a mate and you don't know anything about it, always come on over to yerbamateland.com and click on the review tab on top. You can't see it right now because we're on the actual page, but usually there's a review tab on top when you go to the home page. And on this page, you'll see just many yerba mate reviews that I published. We only sell maybe 2 or 3 of these mates that are on the reviews. So these reviews aren't really here for you to buy the mate. Of course, if we sell the mate and you're so kind enough to buy the mate from us, thank you very much. But the main idea here is just to share this information, just to get it out there, just to create a body of work around yerba mate and help to enlighten people on the different flavor profiles and the textures of mate and the different effects. So this is just a little quick scroll down of all the different types of mate we've reviewed. This is the other Nobleza Gaucha I was talking about earlier. This is the one that's kind of boring for me. It's okay. It's not bad. It's kind of malty, kind of robust. But I would say this Nobleza Gaucha that I just reviewed now is definitely a step up. So that's pretty much this Nobleza Gaucha I wanted to talk about, guys. This video on another note, and just give you guys some advice on reviewing your own mates. But first, let me check the YouTube page and see if anybody has asked any questions. If anyone has any questions, you're watching this on YouTube, now's your time to ask some questions, guys, and I'll definitely try to help you out and respond. So let me check that and pour some mate. Yes, sir. It's on YouTube. Now's your time to ask some questions, guys, and I'll definitely try to help you. You hear that echo? And respond. All right. So let me check that. And pour some mate. Let's see. Can you add milk? Sure. Why didn't you add cold water? Okay. Good flavors. All right. Word. Let's see. Can you add milk? Why didn't you add cold water? Okay. All right. Good flavor. All right, guys. So somebody asked, why didn't I add cold water before adding the hot water, which I call dummy water? So basically, it works like this. When you're preparing mate and you put the mate inside the gourd, it's a good practice to first pour some cold water, or I think better, mildly warm water or lukewarm water into the gourd to allow the leaves to essentially become tempered and to open up to some degree, and it protects the leaves from being burned. I did do that, but I don't do that before I add the hot water. For me, that's not required. So what I like to do is this. When I'm preparing mate, first I get my water. Get the best water possible. If it's tap water, fine. If you could get spring water, great. If you could get distilled water, okay, that's pretty good. Whatever. Get any water at your disposal, whatever water works for you. Okay? Then get yourself your kettle. I like the kettles that have the top where you could take off and look down into the actual kettle so you can see the bubbles. The bubbles is very important. And I also like to stick my finger inside the kettle to determine the heat. Now be careful. Don't burn yourself. Don't get hurt. Be responsible. So as the kettle is heating up after, let's say, 1 minute or 2 minutes, and the water has begun, what I do is I take a little bit of that water and pour that into the water hole, into the gourd. And then I let that sit for about 30 seconds and I drink that. And then maybe I do that once or 2 times. And then once the water has been properly heated to about, nowadays I kind of like 170 degrees, 170 degrees. Maybe that's, I don't know, 78 degrees, 79 degrees Celsius. That's kind of my water temperature nowadays. Then I pour that into my thermos. I pour that into here, and then I just drink every single time. So the initial water is called the dummy water, and that kind of opens up the water. We see the same thing happening in the coffee industry where people add the water for the bloom to open up the coffee beans, and you see all the white foam, and then they add the hot water, and usually in that sense, the water's boiled. Speaking about water, I want to make a little correction from last video. That whole cancer issue I was talking about with mate, and I said that water that's hot could create situation here where there might be some sort of risk for getting cancer. Now, when I said hot, what I meant to say was water that has been fully boiled. You never want to drink water that has been fully boiled and then drinking it directly after it's been fully boiled. If you fully boil the water, let it cool down and then start to use it as the mate water, but never just boil water where it's a rolling boil and then drink it. That's not good. That's very dangerous. I don't recommend that. Also, if the water is fully boiled, you're affecting the taste of the water. If the water is fully boiled, more oxygen has been released from the water. And in my opinion, I believe that the more oxygen that's retained in the water creates a rounder flavor profile of the water. Yes, call me crazy, but water does have taste. Poland Spring tastes different than Aquafina. Aquafina tastes different than Dasani. Dasani tastes different than Kangen water, which is water with a high pH. And the clusters are different, the microclusters. So yes, water really does make a difference. Really does. Some of my favorite bottled waters that I like to use for yerba mate, Aquafina. I like Aquafina. It's pretty good for me. Some people hate it, hate the company. Fine, I don't. Whatever. I like Poland. Poland Spring. I don't like so much. It's kind of flat for me. But I also like Kangen water. Kangen water comes out of a machine. The water goes through these layers of gold, and it changes the structure to some degree, and it turns the water into more of an antioxidant power. I believe that water is very delicious for yerba mate. Somebody also asked, can you add milk to the mate? Absolutely. In Argentina, when parents are introducing mate to their children, what they do is instead of hot water, they just add warm milk inside the gourd and pass it to their children, and that kind of gets them used to drinking mate. Later on, when they grow up, they start to drink the mate without the milk, and that signifies a person reaching an age of maturity. Actually, in Argentina, there's a nice poem in my book on the last few pages of my book, Matteology, about that, actually. Somebody asked, could I recommend a good mate? Sure, this is a good mate. I could recommend this mate. Nobleza Gaucha. This is a good mate. Of course, I always recommend my own personal blends. I recommend Mission. I recommend Lady's Breath as well, which is our mint yerba mate. But other good brands of yerba mate, classical brands, would be Cruz de Malta, Del Salvador, Canarias. Those are all pretty good. So now let me end on this note, guys. Just want to give you a couple tips when you're tasting mate. Now, for those of you guys that are interested in learning how to taste mate, it's really not too difficult. What you need to do is this. Grab yourself a pen. Grab yourself a piece of paper. Get yourself a journal. Dedicate that journal to yerba mate, okay? And what you do is, I like to do this in the morning, but you could do it any time of the day, because for me, the morning is when my mind is very fresh and receptive to creativity and open. What you do is you get yourself your mate. Now, you don't need to prepare it traditionally like this. You could drink it out of a teapot, you know, French press, infuser. The main idea is this. Relax. Just relax. Get yourself mate. Go into a quiet zone. Go somewhere quiet, okay? And then just drink the mate and don't even think about it. Just drink it. Just have a couple cycles of the mate and don't even think about what it tastes like first. Just drink it and just relax and keep your mind open. Then what you want to do is start to just smell the mate. Pour some out in your hand or pour some out in a clean container. Smell the mate. Continue to drink the mate. Look at the mate. And then start to just what I call flavor storm. Start to flavor storm. Actually, let me show you what I did. I'll actually show you my flavor storm. You can see my process. You'll see what I did. I created something called a flavor storm. What is a flavor storm? Let's see. Okay. As you can see, this is the flavor storm. I wrote down rustic, depth of flavor, just random things that were coming to my mind, just totally random. There's no rules to this. The flavor storm is just random things that come to your mind. Rustic, depth of flavor, ropapio, which is a mate that I thought it tastes like, campo imante. These are just random things. Then I started to refresh myself on different wine categories, like what does seamless mean in wine? There's a term called seamless, which means consistency of flavors. From the wine, from the opening when you first drink the wine to the mid palate to the finish. Is it seamless? Is it quirky? Is it moving around? Is it plush? Plush is another wine term, which means does it feel polished in your mouth? Is it rich, opulent, supple? I believe that studying wine has allowed me to kind of translate so much of what's going on with yerba mate, as well as studying green tea and black teas. Study everything. I just love to study everything. So my flavor storm was this. I just wrote down all sorts of random things. I wasn't thinking about grammar. I wasn't thinking about structure. I wasn't thinking about spelling or anything. I was just like, okay, complex, crispy, dry, elegant, well-balanced acidity adds vibrancy. I wouldn't say this is a plush mate, nor is it too edgy. It has a rustic country air, not as seamless and stable as the transitions found with the other Noblezas, which gives it a quirky character, which I like. Makes things more interesting. Pleasant astringency and bitterness, countryside vibes, sweet aroma. That's just my flavor storm. That's just random ideas coming to my head. And I'm just playing. I'm just playing around. You got to have a sense of just playing around when it comes to reviewing mates. You can't be serious about it. 7 years ago, I was way too serious about it. I was like, okay, what's going on here? What does this exactly taste like? You can't be so serious about it. You got to be like a child when it comes to tasting things. You got to be really soft with yourself and just soft energy. And then start after your flavor storm, start to just really trust in yourself and say, okay, does this taste like Lucky Charms cereal? Does this taste like Kix? Just start to think about all the things in your mind, cereals you've tasted. Rubber, does it taste like rubber? How do you know what rubber tastes like? Well, we've all chewed on a pencil in high school, number 2 pencil. We know what rubber tastes like. I know what wet stones taste like because I went outside and I licked wet stones. I went outside and then I ate some dirt. I really did, because I wanted to build up my palate. So over the years, I've been building up my palate just by everything I ever eat. It could be anything. I think about it. You want to think about things that you eat, and that builds up this kind of repository of flavors in your mind. And then, almost ironically, when you first drink the mate, you don't want to think about anything. And then what happens is your mind pulls forth all these databases that have been reserved in your mind from all the foods and prior experiences, and all the memory that you have of flavors. It comes forth. So, and then you begin to formulate your own opinions and structures and ideas about what's going on with the mate. Now, there's no right and there's no wrong. My reviews may be totally insane to somebody, or they may make perfect sense to somebody else. It's all comes down to the individual. So that's kind of how I review mates. As you'll see in my reviews, I talk about a lot of cereals. I like to eat a lot of different cereals to just to understand the taste profiles of cereals. I like to eat a lot of different candies, not all the time, just for the taste. Like on Halloween, for instance, I'll ask kids for candy. I'll like, let me get some candy. Let me get some of your Snickers and your Kix. And what I'll do is I'll literally just sit down and I'll eat some of the Snicker bar. I'll eat some of the Kix, and I'll be like, what does this taste like? Wow. And I'll memorize these flavors in my mind. I like to drink a lot of different wines. And sometimes I'll just drink some wine. I'll go off alone and I'll just take notes. I like to experience cigars sometimes. Different cigars from Cuba taste different than cigars from Dominican Republic. Why? I'm curious. So then I begin to research that. I drink different beers. All of this builds up my palate. When I'm in Argentina, even though I'm a vegan, sometimes I'll eat a little bit of meat here and there just to taste the meat. What's going on with this meat? Why does it taste this way? I'll eat something that I usually wouldn't eat just to build up my palate. That's how you really build your palate. You just experience a lot of things, and then you remain calm, and then you drink the mate, and then all those things you experience come forth, and then you write it down, and then you drink the mate 6 months later, or a couple days later, or even 5 years later. Then you refine that, and then you refine that, and that's all there is to it. There's no real craziness about it. You just have to be, your mind has to be prepared. Just like anything in life, if your mind is not prepared for it, it will never manifest. Your mind must be prepared and conditioned and primed for something for it to happen. That's the beginning stages of manifestation. Here we go, Dave. We're going off on metaphysics again. Yes, that's just who I am. So the same thing with mate. The reason why I believe that I have a pretty good palate with mate is because my mind is totally primed. I truly believe. If you believe, and if you keep on pushing forward with something and persevering with something and keep on tasting things and keep on taking risks, then the universe says yes to you. And the universe, I don't know how this works, but gives you all this superpower to do things. So nobody gave me any sort of degree with yerba mate. Nobody gave me permission to do what I'm doing. Nobody gave me a certification. I just said, I'm going to do it. And I did it, and I'm doing it. And that's it. I don't need permission from anybody. I just do it, and I share what I learned. Am I right with everything? Yeah, for me, I feel that I'm right with what I'm doing and sharing this information. But that's just me. That's my mission. Now I'm going off on a tangent. But anyway, guys, for those of you that want to begin to review yerba mates and study yerba mate, just do it. You don't need anybody's permission. You certainly don't need my permission. Just get some mate, get a pen, get a pad, take notes, and there you go. You opened up a gateway to tremendous amount of information that will be flooded into you. Within a couple months, you'll be talking about mate like somebody who's a pro. Trust me. Just do it and believe. All right, guys. I'm going to go back to the YouTube page one more time to see if there's any questions. And then I think we're going to wrap this up. All right. Let's see. Then what I'll do right before I leave, I'll open up to see if anyone wants to join for a little chat. All right, let's see. Final questions, guys. Final questions. What's up, guys? What's up, Dave? David Ortman, Viru, what's up, man? Morning. All right, let's see. Okay, can I put honey in it? What's up, guys? What's up, Dave? All right. Viru, what's up, man? Morning. All right, cool. Okay. All right, guys. So I got a question. Can I put any honey? Of course you can. When I first started drinking yerba mate in 2009, some of you have heard this story already, so bear with me. The way that I was taught to drink yerba mate was to put sugar in it and to put honey in it and things like that. And for me, it kind of worked. I put a little bit of, I lean towards natural things. So I used to put a little bit of agave and a little bit of honey. The first year, maybe, I was using agave and honey. And then I remember this girl, we were in my apartment. And when I was living in Argentina, I used to have like these mate circles where I just invited friends over and we had mate. And I was working from my apartment. I was making websites and consulting technology. I also self-taught technologist, but that's something else. So somebody came over and they were like, Dave, I don't want any sugar in mine, so you don't have to put sugar in mine. And she said it very politely. In Argentina, if somebody doesn't want sugar, that's okay. They just say, no, you don't have to put sugar in mine. I was serving her, and I didn't put sugar in hers, and I passed it to her, and she consumed it, and she loved it. And then when it came back to me, I poured just the water in it, and I was like, okay, let me just drink this without the sugar. And I found it a little bit bitter at first, but then I was like, wow, it really grew on me. And since then, I hardly ever put sugar in mate or honey in mate. I just don't need it. I love the bittersweet nature of mate. So yes, you can put honey in it. Sure. There's no problem with that. Some people like to pour a little bit of honey in the water hole and then pour the hot water and then drink it like this. Or if you're making it out of a teapot or French press, just pour a little bit of honey inside the French press or the teapot. And there you go. You know, I recommend natural raw honey. Agave is pretty good. Stevia, I don't like stevia so much. Stevia is an herb that's about 400 times sweeter than regular sugar. It's strong. It's powerful. It has kind of for me, it's kind of a weird taste. I'm still playing around with it, but I don't like it so much. And then somebody asked me, does pollution affect mate? Sure, it probably does. If mate is grown in an area that is heavily polluted, I'm sure that the plant has to deal with that level of pollution, and it has to build certain compounds to protect it from that pollution. And those compounds that the plant has built up potentially could affect the taste of the mate. So yes, theoretically, the pollution could affect the taste of mate. As far as I know, where mate is grown in northern Argentina, I don't really see so much pollution. When I'm going through, I was recently in northern Argentina. I was with my friend Milton, and we were driving around all sorts of areas in Argentina in the north, through all different farms, all different areas, and it was very clean to me. Where I've seen so many mate fields, more than I've ever seen in my life, and wherever we went, it was very clean. It was very clean. Now, don't get me wrong, there were these little cities inside Misiones region that, you know, they were just like regular cities where there was pollution. But once you exit the cities and you go into the deep country area where the mate is grown, for me, it looked pretty clean. When you have to worry about pollution, that has more to do with where the mate is stored and where it's dried and things like that. You worry more about that than where the mate is actually grown. All right, guys. So I think that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me just see if anyone was trying to join inside the group. I don't think so, which is okay. All right, guys. So thank you so much, Dave Mattei. Check me out at circleofdrink.com, yerbamateland.com. We're going to keep this going, guys. And I just hope you keep on enjoying yerba mate. For those of you that don't know what yerba mate is, just try it. It's a great herb from South America. Clarity of mind, energy, makes you feel good, makes you feel happy, just makes you I don't know. Makes you a better person, I think. So that's it, guys. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask in the comments below this video on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're watching this. All right, guys. Have a good one. Peace out. Have a good week. Salud. Ciao, ciao.